Men are like, oh, I got to make it home too. I have a fiance. I have children. I do not want to put myself in harm's way for a woman I do not know. So I just want to at least put out there, because everyone's kind of saying like, oh, if you're in the woods with a man, he's going to protect you. He may protect me in the beginning, but that brings me to my second point, that typically men want something for their efforts.
But the examples that you gave earlier, and when you were talking about this, and I totally understand it. I remember in the movie Game of Thrones, they did that, where there was a point in time when it was like, yeah, we'd rather die than let these men get to us, right? I get that mentality. It does make some sense to me. I understand how absolutely traumatizing it is, and the endurance, right? Because it's not like they're just going to do something to you and then kill you immediately. But the examples that you gave were war-torn like countries, extreme situations, complete like apocalyptic times when men are at the end of their ropes and things like that. And those were the men that you're selected. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but one I do know that the number is not 75%. And I feel like even if the number of women who were assaulted was 75%, that still wouldn't be representative of 75% of men being assaulters.
All right, this is a Fanatiq Show. We're going to talk about some good topics today. Remember, everybody, behave. We don't have to do any crazy muting. Just everybody be nice, and let's be respectful of if there's, one varying opinion versus a lot of overwhelming disagreement or whatever. That being said, let's get into the topic here. It's going to be a little bit of a contentious one. There's a thing going around on social media right now, sort of this would you rather question. It's a would you rather, as a woman, be trapped in the forest with a man or a bear? Of course, there's a few different interpretations of that. Obviously, there is one interpretation that being trapped in the forest with a bear is, obviously much worse. That's the initial thing that comes to mind. A lot of people, a lot of women, of course, on college campuses, you can see these videos on TikTok. They're being interviewed and they're saying men, 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 over and over and over. So we're going to talk about why this is, why this may not be. Speaking of B, let's go ahead and go over to B, who's going to give us her explanation, because I think we can all pretty well assume what the bear argument is. A bear is a giant, several 100-pound creature, big claws, big teeth. Everybody knows what a bear is. If you haven't, look it up. But let's hear about the man argument, and then we're just going to go right into some open discussion. So, B, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, Pawns. Hello, everybody. So, I think what's very interesting about this conversation is the responses that women are receiving for picking a bear over a man. There's not been a lot of space for women to try and explain to men who are also actively listening why they decided to select a bear over a man. And some of those reasons being that the bear is more predictable than men. And we are not, it's not lost on women that bears are dangerous, that bears weigh thousands of pounds, that they are aggressive, that they have so much power in their bite, that they have killed people. That is not lost on women in the slightest. What is missing from the conversation is the threats that women feel generally being amongst men in society, in close proximity, and just our real life experiences with men. And we can assume how a bear would respond to multiple things. If we come across a bear and their cubs, if we come across a hungry bear, if we're asleep and a bear comes into the encampment, we have an idea of what we can expect from a bear. We don't have that same type of levity and confidence if we were stuck in the woods with a man. And a lot of men don't understand women and their real life experiences and essentially how we have to live amongst men with our guard up, making sure that we aren't drunk enough, making sure that we're not in unsafe spaces, making sure that we are cognizant of our surroundings at all times. And mind you, this is not me saying that like men are evil and horrible. I'm literally repeating to you all what my dad told me. I'm letting you all know that my dad told me to be very cognizant of my surroundings, who is around me, but more so specifically to be cognizant of the men that are around me and what they're doing, and to kind of keep my head on a swivel because men are unpredictable. This information coming from my own father. So when women are asked, would you rather be in the woods with a bear or a man? The answer is going to be a bear, because even if we die, we understand what that looks like. And we also understand that it would just be death. With a man, there are worse things than death.
Okay. Real quick, who wants to respond? Raise your hand. Okay. See how everybody wants to respond? Okay. So to make this better so that everybody gets their fair shake, let's do 20 seconds, okay? Try to keep it to 20 seconds. Whoever wants to go, the floor is yours. Don't be shy. Fanatiq?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, when you ask that question, obviously the danger is going to be significantly more, there is inherent danger with the bear. Like, without a doubt, that bear is very predictable, and it's very predictably dangerous. Men, you can admit they are not as predictable. So then I think there's reason to believe that there are plenty of men that you'd be in the forest with that would have no intention of harming you, that would actually go out of their way to protect you, right? But the idea that no bears, none of them are ever going to be trying to protect you. They're all going to be trying to attack you. So the idea of choosing a bear to me just sounds completely asinine.
Okay.
I guess I'll go. I thought we were going to go in order, but
I don't think we should dogpile. Let's try to do one. You can give a response to that, and then someone else, then Zerk go. Someone else, you know what I mean? Because I don't want you to get
I'm gonna be
dogpiled.
20 seconds, and I'm not. It's not gonna be that bad. Like, honestly, I definitely understand where she's coming from. Cause I have a fiance. We just got out of a conversation regarding this stuff. I try to be very empathetic of like the situation and the lived realities of lived experience of women that are having these conversations and stuff. It's just that, in my opinion, this conversation needs to happen. Don't get me wrong, and we need to do our utter best to, as a collective, to reach out to our brothers. You know what I'm saying? And get them on board with taking these types of conversations serious. It's just that this specific narrative, this specific question, in my opinion, is just not how we start that conversation.
Okay. Would anyone care to respond?
All right.
Pro Bears? Go ahead.
Oh, Pro Bear? No.
Go ahead, Medium.
Okay. Hi, I'm Medium D Speaks. Yeah, so there is an old saying, for anyone that goes out into the woods, has any experience in wilderness, the scariest thing you can find in the forest is not a skinwalker, is not a bear, is not a moose, it's people. That said, 100% agree with Fanatiq in saying there is no chance that a bear is not going to be a danger to you. And there is, I believe it's also asinine to say that there's a 100% chance, equal chance, 100% chance the bear will harm you. Definitely can't say there's a 100% chance any man will harm you. If it was like human hunters or like dangerous humans that for sure are after you, maybe we can make an argument for the bear. But this kind of feels like, would you still love me if I was a worm? To be fair, I understand the subtext to it, but yeah, I gotta say, there's no situation in which I would take a 100% danger over, like, even if it was 50-50, and I don't think 50% of men are as harmful as a bear, but there's no statistical situation where I'd take that bet.
Okay. I want to give B a chance to respond here. There's a lot that was thrown there, but obviously, in essence, there's a lot of ideas talking about the average bear versus the average man. Go ahead and give your response. Obviously, you can have a little bit more than 20 seconds here, since you have about 3 different things to respond to.
And I have my 3 points. I'm going to try and be, succinct. I first want to say that I believe that a lot of you all feel that if you were in a position where a woman would need assistance, you would help. Traditionally, statistically, men don't protect. That more times than not, women are helping other women. And men are the perpetrators, they are not the protectors. And we've had this conversation before in the past in the social media webs where men have stated that they won't protect women they don't know. Men are like, oh, I got to make it home too. I have a fiance. I have children. I do not want to put myself in harm's way for a woman I do not know. So I just want to at least put out there, because everyone's kind of saying like, oh, if you're in the woods with a man, he's going to protect you. He may protect me in the beginning, but that brings me to my second point, that typically men want something for their efforts. and they're gonna want something for their labor. So if it's me and a man in the woods and he's protecting me, he's gonna want some coochie after a while. And it's just me and him. So if I don't give it to him, he might take it. Because men feel entitled to women traditionally. But if we're in the woods for after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you think that your moral compass of who you are as a good person is still going to stand, and there's no law around, it's just the two of us. That is the fear that comes across women's minds, where they're like, I might be able to get through that first week with that man, won't be able to get through that second one. And that brings me to to my third point, is that you all feel so strongly that if we come across a bear, it's 100% chance that we're gonna die, and it's not. It really does depend on the type of bear and the situation that you come across. It's not gonna be 100%. It's not always going to be 100% guarantee that that bear is going to attack me. I do agree that it's not in the bear's nature to protect me, but it's also not in men's nature to protect me either. So if we're kind of removing that and I'm looking at a man and a bear, a lot of women are going to pick the bear knowing this information.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of people want to respond. Just to throw a little number in there, just to see what everybody thinks. In North America, there have been over 180 fatal bear attacks since 1784. That might indicate that maybe perhaps what B is saying, that perhaps running into a bear might not be as deadly as we might think. Maybe that might be true. What would someone say to respond to that?
Real quick.
Go ahead.
That's because we don't run into bears as much, because we have moved into cities to get away specifically from bears. And also there's a lot of black bears, which are the least violent, and those are the easiest to fight off or like scare away. But if you run into a grizzly, which is rarer, and they're like out in Alaska, and Kodiak bears and whatnot, that's where you're going to be having the danger. That's more a factor of not running into them than them not attacking.
That's literally what I was going to say, is that people use these statistics on like what men have done and what men have perpetrated as opposed to what bears have. And that's, you know, you can use a set of numbers to try to promote any idea that you want, right? Any woman who's
for
been,
the record, not be, just want to.
I know, no, I'm just saying in general. Like I saw a TikTok where they were like doing the math and all this stuff. So like any woman who's been assaulted, by the time she's been assaulted, has come into contact with hundreds, maybe thousands of men, and none of them did anything to her. So we should be looking at the percentage of men that do bad things that are perpetrated versus the number of men that you've encountered in your life. And then look at the number of bears that have perpetrated things versus the number of bears you've encountered in your life. If you've encountered hundreds, thousands of bears, you wouldn't, because you wouldn't live that long to get that far.
I think your hand out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think what I wanted to say first was, I think that question, it really boils down to the type. Really, what the question boils down to is the type of violence a woman would rather be subjected to. Would you rather be subjected to physical violence or sexual violence? Because that's really the question. And women are telling us that they would rather be subjected to physical violence than sexual violence. Now, the other part of what you're saying, when you can look at numbers and you can look at how many men women come into contact with versus it actually happening, it's still a concept that they have to deal with when they go out. There's still, I'm not saying that there's an anxiety associated with it, but even if it never happens, a woman still thinks like, I might be sexually assaulted in this situation if I go here, if I do X, Y, Z. So I think the real question is, and what we really have to ask is, what type of violence do women fear the most? That's really what they like, and it's sexual violence versus physical, I'm going to be mauled violence. And when we understand that, I think we can understand kind of where they're coming from in their outlook on situations. Like, I personally would rather be slapped in the face and have my head slapped off than sexually assaulted. So I think it's to me, that's really the question that they're asking with the bear.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Go ahead, Fanatiq.
So then, look, it's this, man. I gotta ask this question because I saw other people do the same question, and then they started extending it in different ways, and people were giving really strange answers to me there. They were asking men, "Hey, would you rather your mother be left in the forest right now with a bear or with a man?" And they were asking, when they asked another man, "Hey, would you rather your fiance be in the forest right now with a man or a bear?" And almost all of them like were choosing bear, and I felt like it had to have been me. My brain couldn't understand it, so I have to ask, Colin and B that same question. If we were going to take your mother and just drop her into a random forest where we knew there was a bear present, or we were going to drop your mother in that exact same forest and there was going to be a randomly selected man that would be present at that forest as well, which would you prefer in that situation? And for you with your mother, and then for Colin with your daughter, hypothetically.
Still the bear.
Okay, still the bear, Colin.
And by rather, we're saying the bear would be the lesser of two evils. Just making sure.
The bear would be the lesser.
Just making sure, because sometimes the question. Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Having a 15-year-old daughter. My daughter just turned 15 yesterday. Having a 15-year-old daughter. I'm still like, without pandering, I still would say that I would be much more. I would put my daughter in a bear situation than a man situation. With a 15, I'm just being honest. I hear you.
I mean, I know you not to be a liar, so I know that you're being honest. And I think this really gets down to the heart of it. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me because, like, I love my mother very much. I love all the women in my family very much. And I consider myself to be a protector of women. I would never put women into a situation like where they're going to have to be battling a bear. A bear is deadly. And it feels to me, and I could be completely wrong because I don't think that that's the case, but it feels like people are intentionally saying man specifically so that we can have the conversation about the dangers that women face. We don't have to be disingenuous to get that conversation. If you leave your 15-year-old daughter in that woods in the woods with a bear, she's dead. Like, if the bear is hungry at all, if the bear has any intent to kill her, she can't climb a tree. Bears climb trees. She's not surviving. Whereas with the man, we literally don't know. We're choosing guaranteed death because if a bear wants to kill your daughter in the woods, she does not have the survival instincts or the survival capacity to live. So we're choosing guaranteed death versus, I don't know, there might be a potential that he might be one of the 5% of men that offend that might actually do some sort of rape or something. That's crazy.
Fanatiq, can I respond?
Yeah,
of course.
Let's give B and then Colin a chance to respond.
I completely understand your passion, and I can see the other men on the panel like shaking head in agreement, and I completely understand why that would be like completely unfathomable to you. Like, I understand why this is like crazy to you. But what I want you to also understand within the craziness of this topic, that there are women out there that have gone through such extraneous, traumatic situations, and we understand that when times are tough and we are at the end of the world, and we have seen this amongst war-ridden areas, we've seen this in areas where the economic downturn has happened, that men become violent. And I don't think you all really understand how serious women are, that they would rather kill themselves than to let them be amongst you all in an economic turmoil, that they rather kill themselves and their children before they leave men to find them in a war-ridden country. That's how serious our experiences are living as a woman in this world, that we rather kill ourselves than be amongst men hoping that maybe they would be nice enough to not sexually assault us, to let our corpses be buried and not sexually assault the corpses, not to let other friends of theirs come in and sexually assault the corpse, that they would just simply kill us and leave us alone. Like, that is probably the most honorable death a man could give a woman, but rarely does that happen. So I know it sounds preposterous, but please know that with all of it sounding preposterous, that's how serious women are about how we would need to protect ourselves from men. It's that extreme for us.
And I think,
can I say something?
It's really quick. I want to just give Colin a chance, just because it was about, the hypothetical was literally about his own daughter. Let's give him a quick chance to respond, and then we'll go to you, Zerk.
If I use my daughter as an example, and this is, we have gone all the way to the extreme of what type of violence I would prefer for my daughter to endure. I would much rather, I would be heartbroken in either situation. I would not sleep well. I could not live well knowing that my daughter's last moments were inflicted upon her through sexual assault, or that she endured it and had to come back from it. And that may be a very man thinking, like, oh, they did this to my baby, they had sex, I wouldn't want my daughter to be sodomized continually. Like, I wouldn't want any of that. I wouldn't want her to endure any of that. I don't want her either to have her head crushed either in the jaws of a bear, but I'm just saying in this specific situation, the real question is what type of violence. And maybe we don't have to live with the thought process of I don't understand that type of violence because it would never happen to me, but it's a real type of violence that it needs to be considered. And we're seeing in the conversation how much sexual violence impacts women as to where like self-harm or just getting themselves out of there would be easier than saying I'm going to stick around and take my chances with sexual violence.
Sir?
Yeah, I wanted to say, when it comes to like, defiling the corpse or whatever, like unless you're of like one of those religions where you feel like, you have to have all of your body parts to be accepted into heaven, it really doesn't matter what they do to your corpse. You're already dead. They already killed you. Like, it's at that point, it's just superfluous. Number one. Number two, I know, unfortunately, more than a couple survivors. I've dated more than a couple survivors. And so I do know many women who have these stories with men. But the key word there is survivor. They're here and they're in one piece. And yes, they have emotional trauma. At least one of them has night terrors. But she's been able to heal largely through like therapy and time and support from loved ones. So like, again, she wouldn't be here if she was dead. Like, I just rather kill yourself than to live the rest of your life, than to experience a trauma that you can potentially heal from and live a productive rest of your life, or potentially long life, and have with your family and your purpose or whatever. You'd rather forfeit all of that. Like, it's just, I guess if that's how you feel, go for it.
Well, Zerk, you were trolling in the chat. You actually don't believe this.
Uh-oh.
He asked if we could give examples, so I was giving the examples that I've been seeing come across my Facebook.
I also want to let you know that necrophilia is a crime. So if you do have sex with a corpse, and many men do have sex with corpse, that's actually why they rather hire women at funeral homes than men. You are booked, arrested, convicted, and go to jail. So I just want to.
I'm talking about from the corpse's perspective. The corpse shouldn't care.
The corpse go to jail for defiling it. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who's hearing, because you said what you do to a corpse doesn't matter. It does
to the corpse. To the corpse.
It also does matter to the corpse. I don't understand why you would think that just because someone has died that you need to like not respect that body anymore, because not respecting that body is what's going to end you in jail, because necrophilia is a crime.
Zerk, is what you're saying that it should not morally matter, not legally? Is that what you're trying to say? I'm saying, okay. Like, okay, I don't want to, I always say this, right? Like when there was a video of some woman who like was smacking this guy's mother a bunch of times, and then they said that like they pulled up on her later on and like shot her 52 times or some shit and killed her. And I was like, no, that's too easy. Like, once she was already dead, like she doesn't get to feel the punishment that you're doling out. Like at this point, you're just doing this for your own self. Like what I'm saying is, you're saying, it's a fate worse than death for them to defile my corpse, but it's like, you've already died. Like, how is that a worse fate when you can no longer feel it? And, to you, nothing is anything anymore because you're dead. Okay, I was just wanting some clarification.
For sure. I want to say a few things. While I agree, I don't want it to be I don't want the conversation to get too crazily, or I don't want Zerk to get too crazily misconstrued. So I hope that makes sense. If not, then we'll go back through it. But the examples that you gave earlier, and when you were talking about this, and I totally understand it. I remember in the movie Game of Thrones, they did that, where there was a point in time when it was like, we'd rather die than let these men get to us, right? I get that mentality. It does make some sense to me. I understand how absolutely traumatizing it is, and the endurance, right? Because it's not like they're just going to do something to you and then kill you immediately. But the examples that you gave were war-torn like countries, extreme situations, complete like apocalyptic times when men are at the end of their ropes and things like that. And those were the men that you're selected. And in such extreme situations, I would totally understand that. But that wasn't what I set up in the question. The question was, if we were to just choose randomly selected men, it was going to be a random person. Do you think more likely that you're going to get a person who's going to assault someone or someone that's going to protect someone? Like a randomly selected man versus a randomly selected bear, right? And so that to me is where the conversation goes. And then Colin, you were saying that, like, obviously, and I kind of get where you're coming from, where you're saying that the thought of the sexual violence is a lot more traumatizing than the thought of death. I hear you. I mean, I'm going to disagree. Like, I obviously think death is just going to be the most traumatizing, but I think that those two things are both so extreme that you don't want to have to think about that with any person, right? Like, I get how there's some sort of parity there. But again, I think the fact that we're even having to discuss sexual assault as if that is the norm, as if the majority of people would do so in said situation, right? In comparison to the bear, where it is the norm. If you run into a bear and it feels threatened in any way, territorial in any way, hungry in any way, curious in any way, it is very likely to harm you. I think those two types of things, like the likelihood, right, like are crazy. As far as survival is concerned, again, a person if with the will to live is more likely to survive a human being whom they can run from, hide from, etc. Climb high enough to where that person no longer has a strong enough footing to be able to get to that person, right? Like in a tree, right? There's all of those things that you can do that you have no options when it's a bear. So the idea of survival of all kinds is significantly higher versus a bear. It sounds crazy.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry. You said your name was B or Bia?
B.
B.
It's B.
Man,
Mhm.
quick question. If you had to guess, what percentage of men would commit some form of sexual assault, given the opportunity? I guess could you throw me a number, like just what you? It doesn't have to be statistically right. Just what you think.
75.
You think 75? Okay, I think that's
75.
extremely high. But let's go with this. Let's go with this. So, if I can reframe the question, would you rather take a 100% chance to die, or in your mind, I think that number's probably not correct, but 75% chance to get raped? You would rather die than what you believe is a 75% chance? Is sort of the question that you're putting forward, right?
I'm trying to understand the question you're asking me. So you're asking me, would I rather 100% die or 75% be raped?
Yeah, you've got a 25% chance of not being, according to your own. I'm just going by your numbers. I'm not going to like go off statistics because it's your hypothetical.
But the key word is survival.
See, I think that's where we're getting a lot of things mixed up. And to answer your question, I still would take the bear. But to also further this,
Yeah, 100%. Okay.
to Zerk's point and to your point, this conversation, we're not going to be able to leave it with you all learning something, because I'm the only person that has this particular type of mindset. And I am trying to express to you all the mindset of women, but you all are not actively listening. You just want to position yourselves as being offended that women are selecting a bear versus selecting you all, because you all feel as if you all are good men. So why wouldn't someone pick you? And what I want you all to understand is, especially because of Zerk's comments, is that your entire thought process as men is survival, because to you all, the only worst thing that can happen to you is death. But for women, death is always on the table, but everything else is also going to be utilized on that menu. They're going to slit your throat. They're going to sodomize you. They're going to rape you. They're going to poke your eyes out. They're going to pull your teeth out. They're going to pull your hair out. They're going to etch bitch in your chest as they do it. They're going to do all these horrible things, then kill you. So if I had to restate my answer, I would still pick the bear, because all I'm going to do is die. And a lot of times, because men, Zerk's perspective here, see women getting assaulted, women getting raped, kidnapped, and hung, and then surviving all of these things, he says, but as long as you survived, a lot of times women are not mentally strong enough to come through something like that and have the will to live. a lot of times, because men are not connected to themselves emotionally, mentally, you all are unaware sometimes of the stressors that mental abuse and emotional abuse can put on someone. Because for you all, the worst thing that can happen is death. And everything else that happens, the emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, psychological abuse, all those other abuses, you all feel like, I'm a man, so I can conquer my emotions. I'm a man, so I can get over my feelings. But that's not how we as humans operate. So I understand that for a lot of people, survival is the end all be all. But what is the point of surviving if every single day you can't go to sleep because of your night terrors? What's the point of surviving if you can't have a physical relationship with another man because now all men scare you? What is the value of your life after something like that?
I feel
But
like
for you all, it doesn't matter. The value of your life doesn't matter because as long as you still got one.
Before we move on, everything you said, the point parts you're making totally fine, but of course, let's try not to speculate into the mindset of others. The whole reason we're here is to ask what people's mindsets are, not to say what they are unequivocally. I mean, let's
Thank you.
Let's try not to speculate into the minds of others. Go ahead, Fanatiq.
what I was going to say is, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What was that?
That's what he was saying. I'm saying from his perspective.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, I mean, then can I say what my actual perspective is?
Okay.
Because right now
I
I've just been responding to what's been being said. So like when I first saw this thing on social media and it was just like a Twitter thread of people being like, oh, at least people will believe that the bear assaulted me. And I was like, I chuckled. I was like, okay, I get it. I didn't think that this would be growing and be at the monster that it is today. Like I've been trying not to speak on it because I got it when I first saw it. Like I said, I laughed and I kept it moving. But now people have blown this up to this point to where it's like now you're throwing in arguments that now I'm going to attack the argument. Like, so it's not even about the scenario because again, I get it. But when you say certain things in your responses to justify the choice, then it starts becoming a little bit unhinged. And that's what I'm responding to because my original response is, I don't care. Any woman who would choose a bear, if she would actually choose the bear, she can go ahead and choose the bear because she wasn't gonna or she can not leave her house and stay in there and die alone with her cats. She has nothing to do with my life. There are plenty of women who would choose men and will choose men and are choosing men, and we'll just be with those women. We don't care. Pick whoever you want. Or at least I don't care. I can't say we.
Okay. And what I was going to say really quickly was that I don't think I'm not emotionally invested. I'm not at all. I don't care what someone else chooses. That's your prerogative. I'm not going to be personally offended by hypothetical women choosing hypothetical people. I'm not placing myself in that category. I consider myself to be an individual. There is not a woman alive that has met me and knows me that would ever choose the bear. So why would I be personally offended that some women on the internet are choosing random bears over random men? That's not personal offense. What I'm going to say is I'm finding issue with the logical contention with the idea that they believe the outcome would be better. And I'm arguing that position. I'm not going to ever get emotionally invested in a hypothetical about random men. Do I feel like what you're saying is logically fallible? Of course I do. But it's not about me, oh, I think I'm a good guy, so women should choose me. Because the question wasn't, would you rather be stuck on whatever with Fanatiq? The question was, would you just man in general? And so then, but I understand if we live in a hyperbolized world where assault and things like that are being hyperbolized by some people, and I get the benefits of it and the idea of helping people to be more ready for these types of conversations and to become more aware. That was a purpose of the Me Too movement in and of itself, so that we can understand that this is happening more prevalent than it is. I do think that sometimes we've gone kind of crazy, especially when, like, with some of the statistics that have been reported on college campuses and the ways that they use, the things that they use to include within assault in order to justify some of those statistics. Or even like the notion that you would believe that 75% of men are like assaulters. I think that to me is just indicative of a belief system that's not in touch entirely with reality, in my opinion. And it's not to dismiss you. I'm not trying to insult you.
I want to ask why you feel that is just like infallible, and like why would I ever have that thought? Because it is dismissive.
So that's why I was correcting it. It's not to dismiss, because it is definitely dismissive, because I'm entirely disagreeing with the thing that you said, but I'm not trying to insult you. It's you believe what you believe. The reason why I believe that not to be the case is because we have data and statistics on these types of things. And I understand that sexual assault and things like that can be underreported, but we also know that the number is nowhere near 75%. And even
The number.
nowhere near 75%. I don't have the number off the top of my head. Hold on. Let me
Hold on,
if-
B. Let him finish his point, B.
If I can finish,
finish his point.
I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but one I do know that the number is not 75%, and I feel like even if the number of women who were assaulted was 75%, that still wouldn't be representative of 75% of men being assaulters, as we're all aware, whenever you're looking at these statistics, that the vast majority of those incidents are coming from a small sample of those people. For example, when it comes to like all of the unmarried black men or the black men who don't have women out of don't have children out of wedlock, whereas you'll find like there's a higher incidence of this thing, but it's coming from a few black men. Same thing with like the murder statistics. There's a very small sample of black men who are doing that. Or when we look at the things about like releasing men from bail, right, where it's like, yeah, releasing people on bail, the vast majority of them are not likely to go back and commit more crime. But there's a small subset of those individuals who are doing it so much that it's offsetting the statistics. Another very concrete example, this is the last one, I'm sorry, I'm hammering out a whole bunch of examples, is when we look at something like the divorce rate, and it's commonly stated, hey, the divorce rate is around 50%. It's up to about 50%. But what you find out is it's not that the 50% of marriages fail, per se. It's that the people who are likely to get divorces get 3, 4, 5 of them. So then as a result of that, the overall marriage statistics look really, really grim. But in reality, the vast majority of marriages are successful outside of those bad actors. Does that make sense?
And then we'll go to Colin.
Can I say something really, really quick?
I would rather her respond first since I said a whole lot.
Response first.
Okay.
You can go.
I just asked my wife and she said, Bear, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, man.
You
So
all don't want to listen to me, so you
All right,
won't
so
get the conversation.
I do want to. So this is the funny thing about this conversation is that, and this is why I'm trying to be as objective as possible in this, right? And I think sometimes what we miss is the data. We talk about data points and these things right there. We're collecting data in real time right now with responses, right? A majority of women responses have been, I would select a bear. This says nothing more than the fact of they still are telling you right now, regardless of if they've had the experience, they've never had the experience, whatever it is, they are telling you that whatever threat that a man imposes is not worth the risk in this hypothetical situation. That's what they've been telling us. Whatever the reason behind that is, whether it's acts of like just straight violence, whether it's sexual violence, whatever it is, boom, 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 bear, 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 bear. Conversation we're having right now, bear. Whether I don't believe that his wife was being funny, maybe she was being funny, but again, chosen bear. These are women telling us that I would much rather deal with this situation with the bear than a situation with the man. We can choose to use our logic to say this makes more, bears make more sense as a choice, or we could choose to have, it's not even empathy or compassion. We can choose to just listen and see, okay, that's really how they feel, and then we need to then we need to have the conversation. Okay, why? Why do you feel that way? And then listen and see what they're saying in return. That's all it is objectively, because I can't impose somebody to feel how I feel about it. I can't impose her to say, no, take the bear because this makes more sense. I couldn't impose on my daughter if she chose to select a bear, like, baby, take the man. She's going to take the bear. It's for a reason. Why is that? What's the reason for that? What's the reason for the bear? And nobody wants to listen to the answer from that.
No, it's not that.
No,
we're not
but like I
listening.
said, we know the answer. Like I literally have, and I have a friend that does this too. If we're out and we're like in a bar or whatever, and we want to bring a girl home and she's with her girls, we will literally say, take a picture of my driver's license. It has my address on it. Like we get that. If a girl takes a picture of my license plate before she gets in my car for the first date, I get that. Like for the same reasons of this scenario here. So that's what I mean, is like, we know that a lot of men do a lot of bad shit, but I'm saying, if you're that scared of it that you would pick a bear, go ahead and pick them. Goodbye.
20 seconds. B,
Yeah.
would you like to respond? B, if you want to respond, you're just muted. Oh, okay,
No.
my bad. I'm sorry. I thought I saw
Okay.
it.
So just
No worries.
can I say one more thing then? Because I think it's insane. It's insane for you to say that we're okay. I can't speak for everyone else. I think it's insane for you to say that I'm not listening, because I hear you. I disagree. And I think that it's really crazy because I am directly addressing, I'm taking notes when you're saying certain things. I'm literally responding to some of the points that you're bringing up, like the 75% statistic, or the post-apocalyptic men, or the idea about people doing things with corpses. So it's not that I'm not listening, it's I disagree. Now, I can say for sure that if that's your choice, fortunately, this is your opinion. Now, can I say that your opinion is not well-founded? Absolutely. That's what we do. We criticize things. That's the purpose of a discussion. Colin, I believe very, very much in the idea that if your daughter was to choose the bear, she could do that. And I would say that as a parent, that I would imagine that your thing would be to, if you disagreed, would be to explain, here's why I think this would be the best option. We do it all the time. If your kid says, I want to go to college to study underwater basket weaving, it's like, look, this is a thing that you could do on the side, but let me explain why this is not the best option, right? So if something logically doesn't make sense to you, then you can do that. Now, when someone communicates something to you that betrays maybe like a type of an emotion, an attachment, a fixation, or something like that, you still can process things logically and explain that to them, and then deal with the emotional attachment or whatever the fixation is and what the root cause of that is, which is why I said earlier, I feel like, I know that it's not true because I know how other people's brains work. I know that it's not true, but it feels like people are intentionally saying bear here specifically because they want to have a conversation about the dangers of men. I'm willing to have that conversation about the dangers of men. That's the purpose of having a podcast. But do I genuinely believe that the bear is the better option? Obviously not, logically, statistically, danger-wise, survival rate-wise, etc., 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 etc. So I think it's really unfair and inflammatory to accuse us of just completely ignoring you and not listening. We're allowed to disagree and still have our opinions. What part do you believe that you've said that I couldn't quote to you because I have a fantastic memory, that I wouldn't be able to tell you back what you said? I'm listening, I disagree, and I'm rebutting.
When I first brought up the fact that I felt that you're being dismissive, you did correct yourself, but Zerk was also being dismissive as well. So when it comes to me trying to express why women are feeling this way, and Medium just came back and said his wife said bear too, I am trying to explain to you all the severity, like the worst of the worst. Because sometimes, unfortunately, unless you present the worst of the worst, it really doesn't wake people up. The worst of the worst was post-apocalyptic, war-ridden towns, sexual violence. That is the worst of the worst. Because the simple part of it, and I just want to say this now, because a lot of men want to like rest their laurels on logic. This is not going to be a logical response that you're going to get from women. That's just straight up.
Of course.
Because it's going to be self-preservation, and self-preservation looks different for everyone. So if you're going to just rest and say the bear is an illogical decision, why wouldn't you pick the man? And I'm saying it's not going to sound logical to you to begin with, but women's experiences, their lived experiences, the qualitative data that we have received since we were children is going to be for us that the bear is safer than the man off the strength of predictability, which will be the smaller part, right? So if I'm not even going to use the extremes here, the smaller portion of it is the predictability of what we can understand would happen with a bear and the unpredictability of what we don't know could happen with a man. And you may say to yourself, logically, it could be a 50-50 chance with the man and you could survive and nothing could happen. And that's true. But our lived experiences and what we have been taught even by the men in our circle is that you never take that chance. You never take that chance.
If I got one analogy to respond to with that thing, with the predictability statement, this is again why it's logically fallible. It's the idea if someone told me you have a choice, you can either ingest this vial of poison, which has 100%, which is 100% fatal, or you can go ahead and play Russian roulette on the side here. Guess what? At the end of the day, you can make the argument that one is more predictable, because guess what? The more predictable outcome here is that poison. However, predictability, when you're looking at statistics in which you have a paucity of individuals who would perpetuate the danger that you're talking about, we're talking 1 in 6, which I don't even think to be an accurate statistic here. right? I would imagine almost anyone would choose those two things. Like when anyone would choose the bullet thing. So predictability in and of itself isn't enough to justify it, especially when the predictability is so much more dangerous than the uncertainty that you're running from. Statistically, it just mathematically, logically doesn't make sense.
But
Right,
this
so-
is where we're going to find a space where we're just not going to, and it's totally fine for us to agree to disagree. But what we're disagreeing about is women lived experiences and the statistics that men are able to find. That's kind of what we're disagreeing. And it's okay for us to disagree and for us to see these different perspectives, because we're only going to be able to go so far. But where we're only able to go so far, Fanatiq, is that I am sharing with you that it's not going to be a logical response, and you're kind of finding like, where's the science? Where's the science? It's going to be a interpersonal feeling that every woman has, and unless you're a woman, not every woman. Many women have a very similar experience growing up in a world where we are deemed as second-class citizens, and we have to kind of maneuver around what we understand to be a male-centered society. So this conversation is only going to go so far because you all have a limited experience, because you all are men. And I have no problem sharing a woman's experience, but because you all don't want to really understand where I am coming from, because then you change it from BearVsMan to a vial of poison, and then it goes from like one situation to let's bring in the mom and the daughter. We can just stay with the man and the bear, and we can just say women feel scared around men, and we have to learn how to live amongst men. And when we leave our houses, we understand that we are going to come around and be amongst and in proximity of men. But we have to believe, because we still have to live life, that we can park backwards, so that if somebody rolls up on us, we can get out. That when we leave the house, we got our keys in our hand, we're ready to go. That if we need to be out and about, we're on the phone with our girlfriend, we got our location on. Because the thing is, and I think someone said this earlier, like, if you're so scared of men, just stay in the house and stay with your cats. And I'm like, I hate cats, I'm allergic. But we have to still live life. Like, women can't live in the house and just be scared of men. However, we understand how scary men are, so we take all of these precautions so that we can still live our lives. Precautions that men are very unaware of.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you, because I don't want to believe that I understand without actually getting it from a woman. The perceived danger for men, more often than not, is it sexual violence? Or is it just violence in general? Like, are women concerned about being beaten up by men more than they're concerned about? Say it again.
Violence in general.
Violence in general. Okay. So then what I was going to say, I will retract completely.
Okay.
All right, I have a
Let's
question.
let M87 go. He hasn't talked.
Yeah, I've been quiet super duper
true.
long time. I don't need your responses. You can respond if you want to, but this is just kind of a little bit of an observation based on what I've been hearing so far. This seems like no offense, B. This seems like a trauma response. All right. This seems like a trauma response that whether it happened to you directly or to somebody that's tethered to you, it seems like this happened to somebody that you know or you've seen on the internet, whatever. And
try to avoid the personal stuff, yeah. Personal stuff, yeah.
And I'm just saying, like, when this happens, when this trauma, like,
wait.
M87. Let's just avoid all personal attacks of any kind or personal speculation.
So I'm gonna keep that, which you're right. What I'm gonna say instead is, for a lot of the women because especially one of them that I've spoken to, is that better? All right. Sure. So yeah. So for the women that I've had this conversation with, it seemed like it was a trauma response. This choosing of the bear is more of a trauma response than it is something that they studied for and that they did some kind of like super in-depth zoologist reporting or conversation with like all these different type of experts. No, none of that happened. This is something they've seen or experienced themselves that they are unfortunately projecting onto just men in general. Like, there's no delineation, there's no adjectives added to like differentiate, to separate like the upstanding guy from like all of these from the men that these young ladies are afraid of. And I'm not gonna say that they shouldn't be afraid of these people, but like when it comes to like when all this stuff, when all these conversations that this is really supposed to be about goes unanswered for so long, here we are. Here now we're in a viral moment, a viral conversation about something that us guys see to be doesn't seem rational at all. So that seems to be unfortunate. That's just an observation, okay? But otherwise, I don't know if there's gonna be a future question. I think the only thing we can do now is one, to create a support system for the women that have these traumatic experiences, and just be more accepting, and just show some real compassion so they can find some sort of healing through these processes. Otherwise, we have to find ways to protect these women. Either we do it ourselves or we give them the means for them to protect themselves. And I'm kind of gonna leave it at that.
Okay. I'll go around. Let's talk about what we think we've learned or haven't learned, or basically just what you think.
Hold on. Can I just address something that was said?
20 seconds. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No. B did say at the end of her last explanation that, like, again, it seems like she said men are unaware of the precautions that women take and the things that they have to worry about. And I feel like, I don't know how you could say that when I specifically gave the example of, like, I know I'm a random man. I could do all of these things, which is why I offer my ID to a new woman, which is why I offer my license plate to a woman, which is why, like, I understand if I'm told no because they don't know me that well yet, and I could be that type of man to where I have to message somebody for weeks on a dating app before they agree to meet in person because I could do all these things to them. I get that. I've been living in that world this whole time. I acknowledge all of those things. I participate in them. So, like, to then say, oh, we're unaware of it, it's like, how can you say that after I said all of those things first?
Because I wasn't talking about you, love. I was speaking generally. I wasn't directing that comment specifically to you. That was a general comment. And generally, men are unaware of the precautions women have to take on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so we'll go around one by one. We're going to start in the top left with B. We're going to go down and all the way around, and we're going to talk about how the panel went for you, what the prescription is going forward, and then at the end, remember, please, or beginning, doesn't matter. Shout out your name, shout out your channel. Give all your stuff. We'll start with you, B.
The conversation was good. I like conversations where I have to talk to people who have adverse ideas or different ideas, because I think it allows for me to grow and to understand the opposition and like where other people are coming from. Because when I have these conversations at high altitudes with the purpose of teaching and learning and people kind of like expressing and stretching their brains, I want to be more knowledgeable about where other people are coming from, different perspectives that are not mine. So I thought this was great. I learned a lot about essentially how other men think about women, how other men think about if women are illogical, stupid, to pick the bear, some of the word and phrasing and thought process that you all have around women. It's great. I literally love to sit in these spaces and just kind of collect data, because that lets me know how I can respond when these type of conversations come up. And if you would love to hear more from me, I have a podcast called Tactless Radio. You can find it on all streaming services. I am BearVsMan, so BearVsMan on Instagram. I am Tactless Radio on TikTok. I am also Tactless Radio on Facebook, Twitter. Hang out with your girl.
Couldn't cut that tension with a chainsaw. Fanatiq, take it away.
All right, look, at the end of the day, y'all know how I love conversations. I'm always going to have my perspective. I'm like extremely logically oriented. It's a skill of I have to intentionally like think about things from an emotional perspective, and I'm always going to default to logic. That's how I operate in my life, 100%. So if I come to the conclusion that a situation is illogical, that doesn't mean that I don't understand why people make it. It just means that I, at the end of the day, do believe it is an irrational decision considering a desired outcome. Wow, some people will have different points, different desires, and so on and so forth. So I get that. I did get a little uncomfortable at times because it felt like there was a bit of shutting down happening, and I don't want this to be a space. And you did get kind of dogpiled. I mean, there's only two of you, but I mean, it's not that big of a dogpile because at the end of the day, it was really 2 on 2, 2 on 3. And so, it wasn't crazy, right? Well, I mean, MA7 did contribute twice, so that's fair. Look, at the end of the day, it was a great panel. I love having these kinds of conversations. I wish I knew more women that would be willing to have these kinds of conversations so that it wasn't as crazy of a dog pile. But that's why I have Colin there, because that dude is always coming from this different perspective. We are always at odds, but he's a very intelligent dude, so I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody for being here. You guys know where to find me and all that stuff. We need to worry about all that.
It was about 60-40, to be fair. I wasn't exactly timing it, but we were at about 60-40, which is definitely better than I thought. That's 2/3. I mean, 3-2, so that's actually pretty good odds. It's actually about what you'd expect.
It ain't 75%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Men and women need
I see what you did there.
Yeah, men and women definitely need to learn how to communicate with each other. I definitely learned a lot every day with my fiance. I really thought every guy was like, I'm sorry, not every guy. I thought everybody was just so focused on like, what does the fact say? What's the data say? Who can I turn to for some sort of educated or response? And the thing is, for a lot of people, for a lot of women especially, I've received those type of that type of communication. You know what I'm saying? Where we had that type of dialogue where they actually cite things to prove their statements. So there's nothing against anybody. No, I'm sorry. That's not. So there's not a strife against any women, anything like that. It's just that when it comes to like this specific conversation, I'm just saying, if you want to like get a guy like Fanatiq to understand like what's going on, you want to get a guy like me, the other gentleman here, to like really be on board with what you have to say. Like something is gonna have to be presented to like for it to essentially logically make sense for us. I'm just speaking on behalf of like men across the globe that think rationally, at the very least. The ones that should be making, I would argue that's the ones that should be making the decisions, along with the rationally speaking minded when I don't want to get caught up in that. But regardless, I do believe this was. I don't want to say it was a show for me because I didn't get too involved into the back and forth. But I do think I definitely learned quite a bit. I definitely contribute a very sound approach as far as the expression of the women's perspective on this situation. I definitely heard some things I have not heard before that can help me have a better conversation with my fiance about this. I literally just got done debating with her about this all the time, but like I do like the idea of empathizing and also sympathizing and stuff, because this stuff is going to be necessary for us to progress forward as a society. But all that aside, I am hard thinking of the Chicago Black Delegation podcast. You can find us at Chicago Black Delegation on YouTube. Shoot us a line. We mostly just do reaction videos right now, and we have a call in and talk about what you want to talk about and show us love, show us strife, or whatever you want to talk about. Appreciate the opportunity we had again, Fanatiq. This has been a whole lot of fun.
Nice. All right, medium D. And I was trying to keep it to like 30 seconds.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I'll try. By the way, Fanatiq, if you're when you were typing, the sound was over him.
I forgot. My bad. Sorry about that.
Just wanted to let you know. Just a heads up. Okay. Yeah. This is definitely an interesting conversation. I think it's more so pointing to the broader topics that are not really mentioned. The broader topic of the consequence of, what would be the consequence of being faced against this opponent versus this opponent. Thankfully, this is never going to happen. Very thankfully. Nobody's ever going to have to choose between being mauled to death by a bear or being assaulted, hopefully, unless it's like a situation where you're running out into the woods because you've been kidnapped, and stuff like that does happen. It's just a hypothetical, but it allows us to have, exactly like the other people have said, a conversation where we can hear women out, survivors out, and even women that aren't survivors but are wary because of how many women are. It allows us to just see a perspective on something that seems ridiculous. Really, really does. But it is, like other people have said, just a window into what is actually going on beneath the surface. We're going to use this seemingly ridiculous veneer to get to actually valid, interesting, worthwhile discussions and spreading information and looking into what the human experience looks like in in, let's say, the United States. I don't know if everyone's in the United States here, but the United States, for example. All right.
I'm Pawns, just Pawns. You can catch me on Twitch, just Pawns, Instagram, just Pawns, Twitter or X, Sensory Overlord.
Oh, right. And I'm Medium D Speaks, and you can find me at DNZ Speak, me and Zerk on Kick. I forgot to promote. My fault.
It's all good. Hey, just for the record, hey, everybody, look, listen very carefully, okay? This is what a 30-second closing looks like. Okay, I think we talked about a lot of good stuff today. I think overall I disagree with everybody on the panel. If you want to hear my opinion, go to twitch.tv/justpawns or YouTube Just Pawns. All in all, there's some interesting perspectives. I'm glad we talked about the stuff today. I'm glad B got 40% of the time to talk. And I'm glad that we're going to end with Colin. Zerk, why don't you go ahead and go first, 30 seconds.
That's hilarious. Yeah, thanks for having me again. It was, as I already pretty much said it, so I guess I'll just be reiterating it to close, is that I already said in the Discord days ago, this is not my horse, not my race. I don't really care. Whoever wants to pick the bear can go ahead and pick the bear. I went on a date last night with a woman who obviously didn't pick the bear. It was one of the greatest dates I've had in a long time, and I look forward to continue to do so. So don't worry about women who would choose the bear, because they're irrelevant to your life.
Colin?
And in closing, right, I think it was a good conversation. I try to be aware of all aspects of any conversation that I walk into. I'm a very logical person, but I'm also a big socio-emotional person, and all of these things play a factor when you have a conversation like this. So I just appreciate Lauren throwing me in here, letting me have just an opportunity to listen and to speak. You can't find me anywhere except the classroom most times, and outside of that, I will be on the pastry aisle of Food for Less, doing some social emotional eating after this. So, you guys have a great one.
Based.
Thank you, everybody.
I also forgot to plug the channel. I'm sorry.
Plug your channel, Zerk.
Yeah, so I put the link in Fanatiq's chat. It's DNZ Speak. So Medium D is actually my co-host. We stream on Thursdays at 8 o'clock Eastern. That is 5 o'clock Pacific. And so we will be live tomorrow. And I think we'll be having Fanatiq back on.
Yep.
See you guys there.
For sure.